So I'm a professor of biology at Brown University, which is in Rhode Island. I've been here for 33 years. I was a postdoc at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas, and I did my graduate work at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. There's 10 of us in the lab, 4 postdocs, 3 graduate students, 2 undergraduates, and myself. I still enjoy work immensely, enjoy working at the lab bench. That's why I got into this business, not to sit at a desk. So I spend about a third of my time in the lab and about a third of my time teaching and a third of my time, just managing laboratory activities, writing, so forth and so on.
Yeah. So first and foremost, again, thanks for joining us this morning. In particular, I think one of the main focuses that we're going to have with part of this interview process is really to kind of key in on the things that work really well and maybe some of the pain points that brought you ultimately to Boster. And so the first question that we've outlined is pretty open-ended. What do you think when you were initially approached with the prospect of a $600 custom antibody from Boster?
There must be something wrong. I think that's probably why this conversation with CJ started. So two things struck me. One was the price, but the other was the non-model system. That phrase stood out because usually when we get advertisements for antibodies, they don't even mention that they're made against a human antigen or a mouse antigen or maybe a zebrafish. They don't mention that because it's just assumed that that's where the antibody would be made. And so to see the non-model organism really leaped out, and as a consequence, following through on that was really important for me. What we often do is try to test a few antibodies that companies sell. Oftentimes a company will sell, we'll give you a special deal on just a very small amount so you can test this. But then we're paying for shipping and then so forth and so on. Or if we buy an aliquot of an antibody, we're spending $200-300 for that aliquot, which is a huge risk for us because it may not bind to what we're interested in, but it might give us some sort of background signal, and then we're really in trouble. So all those elements came together for your all's advertisement that really leaped out, the cost and that it's against non-model organisms.
What was that communication process like from beginning to end? Did you feel like you were well informed and understood exactly what was being sort of accomplished at each step?
I think throughout this relationship, and I've lost track how many of these custom antibodies we've asked Boster to make. But throughout this process, the communication has been very good. CJ oftentimes will give updates. This has now happened. It's now moved to this step. That is so refreshing in a relationship, especially in a relationship of distance. Other companies we deal with, they oftentimes send representatives to walk through and capture us in the lab. But this distance relationship is really enhanced by the continual updates as to how the project is progressing. And that's been a strong part of the relationship. And knowing that, as I started out saying, there must be something wrong, that correspondence really does reinforce the strength of the relationship and the validation that Boster really is doing a good job.
Did all of the antibodies that you've asked us to produce in the past meet your expectations?
All no, but the vast majority, and it still makes it economically feasible to do this. So there are times when we're getting weird signals that don't bear out to suggest that it's the correct antigen, but we do a lot of different applications, Dakota. We have in situ immunofluorescence, we do immunoblots, we'll do corresponding pullouts, co-IPs. So we push the stringency for the antibodies significantly. I think what makes it so successful, though, is at least one part is the length of the antigen you use. When we've made custom antibodies in the past with companies, the company would say, and we will make this antibody from a 14 amino acid peptide. 14, that's a tough one. Well, we can make two of them and inject. And what y'all do, though, with a couple hundred amino acids is a very different strategy. And so I think the overall success that y'all have had is in part because the length of the antigen that you're using, the starting antigen, is so significantly different than all other companies that it makes it very selective, but also makes it usually working effectively.
Well, that's an expert who knows what to look for.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a very intriguing point, and certainly we appreciate that you have that perspective when you think about Foster. As you kind of think about the impact that this has had on your lab, and maybe even the impact in your field, are you finding yourself sort of chatting about some of these services or experiences that you've had with Foster with some of your colleagues, for example?
Absolutely. And lab right down the hall ordered a few of the Foster antibodies a couple of weeks ago. Mark Johnson is the name, or Rasha's the postdoc. And yeah, I yuck it up a lot. I think you all really do a great service for our community, the community of non-model organisms. And we have a manuscript about to be published, which will have the Foster recognition in that, materials and methods. So yes, when I find a good product or a good company, I do not hesitate sharing that information. And usually in a commercial antibody, the company will want to use the non-conserved region for making the antibody, simply because then you don't get cross-reactivity to other kinds of proteins. So they'll actually emphasize those regions. Third thing, it's proprietary. So they will not tell us what the sequence is. And sequences that are not vertebrate sequences oftentimes will be quite different, even though it's the same functioning protein. The structure of the protein might be the same, the function of the protein might be the same, but the sequence of the protein is not going to be the same. So if they don't tell us what that sequence is, it's totally a guess. And so we have to go through many iterations of experiments. First of all, do we get any signal? Yes or no? And then, oh, there's always a little bit of signal. Can we do a little bit better? And then the second would be an immunoblot, and there's a sort of a signal there at that. And then, following, and then the big test for us is knocking the gene out, and then asking if that signal is gone. And that is not a trivial process. So there's at least 3 layers of testing that we go through to eke out some sort of information from a commercial antibody. And what y'all are doing is enabling us to test directly. Is this reacting here? Yes or no? And then we can move on to the experimental process versus spend all our time on validation.
See, okay. So that's actually hugely impactful for me. As I mentioned at the top, I'm relatively new to Foster. And so I'm coming into this experience kind of hearing about what the company's sort of design ideas were in sort of implementing some of these programs. But really, I certainly appreciate, Gary, hearing from your perspective, how these are impacting your daily work, right? What are the real sort of, nuts and bolts consequences of having these tools available to you? Okay, I think that kind of wraps it for the questions that I have on the docket. While we've got you on the line, is there any immediate questions that you have for Foster? Is there anything that we can help you with?
Keep doing what you're doing. I mean, from a selfish point of view, you've really helped us be able to do our work. And then from a community basis, as your name gets more and more popularized, I can imagine the ability for people to now rely on y'all for quality products and not guesswork products. And I think people shy away from antibodies in general just simply because it's too risky. Whereas if you do a RNA hybridization, you're going to get some sort of signal. So I think it'll take a little while for people to come back to appreciating how important the antibodies are. So please keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, we absolutely will. And we
Thank you so
certainly
much.
appreciate that we've got, sort of loyal customers and customers that are finding great support. It'll be through your successes, Gary, ultimately that, other folks, tend to lean on us for additional, aspects of support. So, thank you, and please keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to see you, and I'm again delighted to put faces with names. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll chat again soon.
Okay.
Bye, Gary.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.